Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Para Bellum Spotlight. I'm joined once again by Konstantinos.
Hey guys.
And this week we're going to be taking a look at the Hermits of Samash. So, taking a little jaunt off to the Old Dominion to see these delightful fellows.
Well, I have to admit this isn't exactly top art in the sense that there is a top art I stepped on, and then I did some color modifications to match the text. But I'm no artist, so if it doesn't look that good, keep your comments to yourself, please.
Right, so it's a grimly dark spotlight this week, I think that's the way to put it. Delving into, I suppose, the multifaceted nature of the Old Dominion. We look at them and we think it's a legion of undead attempting to bring about Haslia's view of that life should be exterminated, and they're very focused in that. But I suppose this shows just how disparate the groups that formed the Old Dominion before the fall were, and how they reach the same end goal, or their approach to reach the same end goal may come in from different directions.
Those actually, you touch on the two primary functions in my head of the spotlight. One is exactly to showcase that the Old Dominion is not very cut and dry. Yes, we have the division of the Anointed, but even their ranks, like the rank and file troops, they don't come from the same backgrounds. I hope in the future to showcase that they also don't come from the same age necessarily, because the Old Dominion spanned a long time, and there were different people, there were different approaches to Haslia and the theocracy and the Dominion itself, and all those things, when brought together under, yes, the banner of Haslia, indubitably bring some kind of division and differences among the troops. Granted, not all of them are very intelligent to do anything about this or to raise their concerns, but we did want to showcase that exactly, that there are very different, maybe not factions or sub-factions within the Old Dominion, but there are very different origins to different troops. Even a very basic troop like the Keres and the Mori, or two basic troops like the Keres and the Mori, they can have very flavored backgrounds. It is a gentle push to our community to come up with your own stories. If you've noticed, the spotlight mentions that there's a bunch of such smaller monasteries and brotherhoods and temples that were part of the official religion, but they were very different between them. So come up with your own ideas, your own color schemes, your own backgrounds. We're very excited to see that.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that from the start, where it talks about this ancient people that were brought in to the fold of the Old Dominion, who were almost on par civilization-wise, and their god was sort of subsumed. But it paints the idea of that sort of Egyptian Roman headbutting going on, where you've got these two, civilizations coming against each other. But then you have within that a very zealot order who are so far removed from the people and civilizations themselves that they actually weathered the storm of the fall, and then came to the sort of the modern Old Dominion, the current iteration of the Old Dominion.
Modern is maybe too strong.
From a very different sort of place, almost that sort of fanatical zealotry and their isolation led them into sort of ghoulish habits and tendencies, that they weren't so much the people close to the capital were making that journey. In the end, the dark flame came back to them as they sought their own sort of route and path to it.
I think it creates an interesting diversity into the possible backgrounds, again, of the Old Dominion troops. And it also showcases exactly kind of the desperation they were in, most of them. It is very easy for 100 Kingdoms noble to say they are monsters. Yes, they are. I'm not debating that.
Yeah.
But monsters in general, well, unless we're talking about actual monsters, possibly made by the Spires, let's be honest. But monsters in general, when they come from humans, they have a journey too, and it's not a pretty one. And this is no justification. I'm not trying to justify, yes, but can you really blame them? Yes, you can. They ate other people. But we want to showcase that the fall was more than just an actual fall of Haslia.
Yeah.
It started way before with the decadence of the Old Dominion and exactly how these very religious, very faithful people were forced to be isolated, and this created kind of an echo chamber of their own beliefs until there was only zealotry and fanaticism. I mean, there was before, probably to a certain degree, but it only exaggerated those faults. And then after the fall, the fall of mankind kind of kept going. Like, the survivors of that side of the world had to endure unbelievable trials and had to do horrible things in order to survive, and in the end survive as members of the Old Dominion.
Yeah.
It is something that is easily forgotten, that there are still some people that are kind of alive among the Old Dominion, whether they're pilgrims from the 100 Kingdoms that have this ideal image in their head about the Old Dominion and the old ways and everything, or straight up lies, whether deliberate or, you know, to sell books or to sell a nice story or anything, or, you know, because the Whisperer is somewhere there and is trying to recruit people for the Old Dominion. So I think that is an interesting thing to bring forward, that these are, in their core, in a way, in a very twisted way, they're still humans that went down a path that is not very human-like.
Well, I suppose their fanatical devotion was their undoing in the end, because they were isolated already, and when things went bad, they doubled down on their isolation.
Yeah.
They didn't attempt to move out, find other people, save themselves, or flee. They were so fanatically devoted to Haslia and how they perceived their own
version of
their
Haslia.
salvation came courtesy of him. You know, people will have to read the Spotlight to see where their salvation came from, but they really, you know, they were so fanatical and so zealous in their worship that they couldn't see that there was any other way of surviving, rather than staying where they were or sending somebody to the capital to see what had happened. There was no, I don't even think flee came to mind with them.
And I think the isolation that you mentioned was exactly the key point, because the fall began almost 3 centuries before the actual fall. So there were a few generations at least of these monks that were isolated in their fort.
Yeah.
Both out of fear and out of belief that this was their role in society. We are the wardens of this place and whatever this has.
Yeah.
So again, because new recruits, they would by default only know this, especially towards the end, especially at the time of the fall. So going back out into the world and considering the background for most of them, they wouldn't feel very comfortable with themselves, which is ironic, really, because what they were seeking, not all of them, of course, but some of them are seeking, was actual salvation, was forgiveness. And in the end, their fear to confront the actual world because of what they've done kind of doubled down on their crimes that they had committed in the past.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you live in an echo chamber, I suppose.
Yeah.
It reinforces your beliefs and sort of carves you out. But it's a fascinating spotlight, and it really does, I suppose, shine a light on the fact that there are other areas, civilizations within the realm of the Old Dominion, and you know, across the board of Ea, where just because the design, the artwork, the studio paint jobs, or whatever it happens to be for a specific faction are done in one way, it doesn't mean you can't carve your own niche of a specific army out and go, well, I'm going to go in this direction. I'm going to tell my own tales and stories, because there's a lot more that you can dig into and grab onto and explore, and you don't always have to follow the same paths that have been blazed before.
That is absolutely true. And it is something that is very painful for us, that there are, limitations to production and release schedules and manpower that we can put behind things. And we can't always bring you the scope of what we've created and what we would like you to see. That is partly deliberate. We like the darker corners of the world because we want the players to feel free to fill those corners. So we leave a lot of question marks out there, and that is deliberate. We give you the fuel in the sense that there were many different civilizations. Eventually, we might even reveal a full list or a partial list, or the same thing that we've done, for instance, with the 100 Kingdoms. We've showcased some kingdoms, get inspiration, create your own. And I think that it is a very difficult balance, because we have so many ideas and we have such imagery that is ultimately at use because of the limitations. But we do plan eventually, time allowing and production allowing and everything allowing. I know that Stavros is very keen on bringing a lot of different things on the same themes that we've already showcased.
Well, there you go, folks. It's worth taking a dive into the Spotlight. You can check it out over on the Para Bellum Wargames website right now, and let us know what you think about exploring the nooks and crannies of the world, and where can you drive your inspiration in a new direction. Until next time, bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.